And that is by Wendin, also a professor or a professor emeritus at Chalmers University. And Göran has coordinated, I think it's 5 EU projects on superconducting qubits. Yes. By now. And who is also he's also a senior advisor to the Wallenberg Center for Quantum Technologies.
I'm very happy to actually to be able to connect to Alexia Fev's talk this morning, because a long time ago, Prof. Landauer, as you many of you know, already said that information is physical. And that really has implications, because lots of people think that quantum information was something esoteric, just moving in space somewhere without any real energy consequences. But as you all know, it takes energy to flip to bit flips, and a computer chip processes, stores an energy, and dissipates heat. And of course, most of that heat is done simply because you charge up things, and there is a V squared energy deposit there, and then it's just dumped somewhere. But if you have a really reversible system, you could actually get rid of that in principle, but still just the information content contains energy and entropy, of course. So in principle, at the very end, it costs energy to throw away information. So Maxwell's demon, he gets hot. That has consequences, as Alex and many others that the consortium explained. That Moore's law originally described exponential scaling of computer hardware. That's the number of transistors. And this picture, you sort of see this famous tale about the king that was offering somebody whatever they wanted in order to get paid for something, and he just wanted a few grains at every square, right? And that became quite a bit in the end. That's really then exponential scaling, just to the end. And the point is that Moore's law now still describes exponential scaling, but that's because of you do parallelizing everything, right? So you still keep up that. But that simply means that this implies exponential scaling of electrical power also. So the Frontier exascale machine, right, the world's fastest machine, that takes 21 megawatt of electrical power as far as I can see. And that means that you need a separate power station for that kind of thing. So, and then when you scale up to internet, social media, AI, Internet of Things, etc., I mean, globally, this is exploding. And I probably shouldn't say so, but I mean, in principle, most of these servers, information is physical, but the question is it useful? So we have argued about what energy is used for really in these server halls, for just streaming music or useful computations. Anyway, that's another problem. So quantum computers can probably provide the exponential speed up for approximately, mind you, approximately solving some hard problems with finite resources, time, memory, and energy. So, and quantum computers offer then, in principle, quantum advantage for certain classes of hard problems. And so a typical killer application, of course, is molecules. And then the time to solution here depends on, in a classical machine, it grows exponential with the problem size. And at best, with a quantum computer, it increases linearly or polynomially. So there is also a range there where there is no real quantum advantage at all. But in the end, you should be able to have quantum advantage if the quantum computer holds its promise. So the original killer application, that was of course Shor's algorithm for factorization. But as you've been here now, today the killer applications are sort of use cases like quantum chemistry and material science and optimization. So I mean, this is an optimization of flight schedules, the tail assignment problem. And this is the sort of the enzyme ephemerase to bind nitrogen. Actually, but this specifically this problem is what Matthias Troyer a number of years ago sort of really held forward to discuss what is needed for what is the best killer application for quantum computers. That's quantum chemistry, and that example is used all the time. My problem is that with time we have really understood how difficult this is, but nevertheless this problem is sort of maintained by politicians, etc., as the kind of killer application that we are still selling things on, as if it were closer than. I think we have this problem that we scientists are having a quite moderate view on what's possible and the time of it, while unfortunately I think politicians and people at that level and journalists trying to promote these things are overdoing it. But yeah, anyway. So, because, and here it comes, what is needed is 1,000 plus perfect qubits with infinite coherence times to do anything really useful. And that will anyway then take seconds, minutes, days, weeks, months to do something at a scale where we're going to compete with the best classical machines, especially in the future, because if it takes 10 years for us to get somewhere, then with the error correction to actually beat classical machines, those machines will then be a little bit advanced already, right? So there's a very interesting competition, and where it converges, I don't know. But anyway, what is possible today is with these noise intermediate scale quantum devices is that currently only possible to fully entangle 13 qubits with 67% probability. That's the definition of quantum volume, the number of qubits you can entangle with high probability. And actually that's the Honeywell continuum ion trap that has that thing. And that quantum value is sort of 8,196. While, as was actually showed in a slide before, IBM can currently only entangle 9 qubits with QV 512. So, we may need to entangle 100 qubits for decisive breakthroughs. So that means we need a quantum value of sort of 2 to the 100. So that involves a huge number of almost perfect CNOT gates. Nevertheless, IBM is currently scaling up the NISQ QPUs. So right now, there is 127 Q, this Eagle one is actually being used. And later this week, you will see something interesting coming out from that. But right now, they're even working with 453 qubits, and so on. You can see how they prepare for the future. But again, only a small part of that can be made coherent. So the IBM scheme is really to make parallel computing over lots of small pieces of coherent pieces in order to build and stitch something together in a processing. So when I think Else-Marie, you showed this 100 by 100 thing, right? But that doesn't mean that they can actually have a quantum volume 2 to the 100. No. I mean, so it's very interesting to see what they really think they can do with that way of talking about things, because It means processing things very much classically to do some efficient operations and get some useful results in the end. But anyway, so in this perspective, IBM has this, what we would say, HPC plus QC ecosystem already. They have built that systematically for the last, since 2015-16, very systematically. And now they have a big operation where they can have an ecosystem where you can do test calculations and all sorts of interesting things. That is really part of a well-planned education system that is going to take a long time to actually get to quantum advantage, I think. But so in Europe right now, we're trying to do something similar. So the European High Performance Computing Joint Undertaking, the Euro HPC-JU, has recently selected 6 sites across the European Union to host quantum computers. So you see those 6 there. It's in Czechia, Germany, Spain, France, Italy, Poland. And this is what those machines are involving. They're actually spanning the whole range of quantum computer possibilities. So in Czechia, IT4I, Karolina, as well as in Germany, the Leipzig Computer Center. No, sorry, the Leibniz, that's in Munich. They're using superconducting machines, like we've been describing. La Pardelsing described, it's the same type of machines, similar at least. While in Spain, this Mare Nostrum high-performance computer, they will be based on ion trap, and that will be digital, and as they will also have superconducting devices, which will rather be analog or annealing. In France, Agency, they will go photonic, with photonic networks. Italy's Seneca in Bologna, they will go for neutral atoms, as far as I understand. And finally, in Poland, they will have an ion trap. And all of this is being right now commissioned. The hosting agreements for these things are just now being discussed, and the commission, well, actually Euro HPC-JU, which is in principle different from the commission, they want to have this agreed on before the end of this year. And there came up a complication at the end or during this process, because first of all these machines were independent, but now the commission or the JU wants us to have a common integration deal. So everybody, all of these will actually work together to try to standardize and have the same kind of entry system, entry points, this firmware, etc., as much as possible. So here's the press release then from last year, that the machines will support a wide range of applications with industrial, scientific, and societal relevance for Europe. So they will support, right? So the expectations are high. And this is what it looks like from my perspective, because this is a project sort of I and my colleagues are involved in. You can see, oh, sorry, yeah, there it is. First of all, up there is our Nordic part of the whole thing. I mean, this is an independent project that we're having right now, this Nordic Quest project where this machine, this 19000 in Gothenburg and the Helmi in Helsinki are talking to the Lumi exascale machine up in Kajaani. But now this thing has become part of this European Lumi Cube project, which is then financed by the Euro HPC, and is one of these 6 machines that we are talking about. And the idea here is first of all, the people, the politicians or the JU that organizes this thing, they have this idea that a quantum computer must be integrated together with a HPC machine and co-located preferably, because the HPC guys, they have this feeling that latency is very dangerous and you have to actually smack things together and sit on top of each other really to be useful. While we, building this network originally, really think we know that that for the long time a very good alternative is to have a HPC connected by fast links to standalone quantum computers in other places. So in this project, we are actually doing all of that. We are having one thing that is going to be put together with Carolina, but then we also will have fast links and explore the whole problem complex of localized versus distributed quantum computing. And so how much time's left? How much? Oh boy. That's fine, that's fine. That's good enough. Yes. So, let's be a little bit concrete how you do this computing. So, in other words, how does a quantum computer work together with a classical machine? Elsemarie, you already described this a bit, right? And I'll do that in slightly more detail. So, you have direct cloud access to a classical machine, and that machine is actually preparing a quantum circuit. I mean, what you see as classical is just it's a command or it's a program simply. It's classical program, but it's expressed in quantum gates. But it's totally classical, and it may take a very long time actually to produce. Then that is sort of dumped into quantum computer, and it's turned immediately into operations on the qubits. So you're setting up a superposition of all these register data. So and that is of course the name of the game of the quantum computer, that you have a superposition of qubits. And the important thing is that you don't have superposition of individual qubits only, but you have actually superposition of the whole register of the computer. Sort of in a classical computer, the register can only have one image at each time, while with a quantum computer you can set up a superposition of everything. And that means sort of not only superposition, but entanglement. So entanglement is nothing separate from this. If you entangle the whole register of a large computer, you have the entanglement for free. But then you have to read out these things also. So there is a classical process of setting up the whole thing. Then there is a piece of execution of those gates, and then you go classical again, but you have to measure things. Okay, so, and in detail, that looks like that. That you set up a trial function which is turned into quantum gates. Those quantum gates are executed on the quantum computer and then measured. The distribution of result is then turned into an expectation value, which then you optimize by running around there. So in this process, this thing may be exponentially fast compared to a classical machine, but that thing is classical and then it can be very NP hard to set up simply this gate structure. And the measurement over here is also NP hard and can take enormous time to do. So you have like Elsemarie said, if you phase estimation is hard, but in a sense, this thing is even harder when you scale things up, because this measurements thing is going to undo the advantage if you're not careful. So you have to work hard on that. Fine. So in the end now, if we're talking about HPC plus QC hybrid computing, there's a very interesting balance between the classical part and the quantum part, because in the quantum stack, you have to have a large amount of classical processing, and especially you have to have super fast classical quantum communication. So from my point of view and many of the colleagues, the name of the game is to build a quantum computer with a strongly in the stack. You have a very, very powerful classical computing that is not performed by the HPC machine. So we have this balance. How much will you how much of the classical processing will be in the quantum side, and how much will be done in the HPC performance? And that is partly a question of philosophy and partly a question of necessity. If you want to do error correction and things like that, which is coming up, you really have to put a lot of classical power on the quantum side, but that, from our point of view, does not come from the HPC machine. It's special hardware built into the quantum computer. So, the press release then from Brussels will support. It means, here are the nice words that we are saying when we're saying how good the quantum computer may be. New medicines, the digital twin of a human body. You understand how hard that problem is, right? Help companies to save time and fuel. Build a virtual environment. So the expectations of what the quantum computer might be able to do in the future or in the near future is really very challenging. So for competitive digital quantum computing, for such problems that I just mentioned, you need 200 to 1,000 fault-tolerant qubits and millions of gates. So it will probably need quantum error correction. Right now, we're offering 50 noisy qubits with 10,000 tuple gates and no quantum error correction. I mean, that is for this project. I mean, of course, IBM and so on are offering better, larger things, but they are not really better when it comes to quantum coherence, etc. So, for competitive digital quantum computer, you can prepare yourself for a marathon, right? Yeah. But on the way to I said 10 years. I saw that Else-Marie said something like 10 to 30 years, and that is really maybe what I would go for. But the point is still that on the way to there, and a necessary way to there, is that you will have to develop things that will probably give you quantum advantage in many ways before, namely analog digital simulators may provide near future non-universal shortcuts to quantum advantage. And already it was mentioned that there's a very Peter Zollern co-worker, and these guys, they really for a while now have been doing these analog machines, and Tommaso Calarco mentioned this in the beginning. So the question is now, if we're talking about superconducting machines, what can we do? And then, recently IBM published a paper, actually came out in Nature Physics this year, doing modeling 27 26 spins on a 27-qubit Falcon processor. So they actually studied the mechanization of that system in detail and with error mitigation and so on and so forth, so that they got good values for the. It was like an experiment on a quantum platform. So and they simply set up an icing model and computed that. And the point now is that IBM is coming up with a paper with 127-qubit Eagle that does the similar problem, and they actually sort of able to calculate the mean expectation value of magnetization, individual spins and the whole thing on 127 qubits, and which means that no classical machine can ever do that. So in that sense, you can say that they are providing now a quantum advantage in this by scale, that they can calculate average values. You cannot calculate entangled states and sort of keep entangled states on a platform and then do something with it. But you can actually statistically, by repeated calculations running, calculate average values with high precision on systems that are so big that a classical machine cannot do it, which means that you can in principle do experiments. It's like having a quantum wind tunnel and test things on, right? So in the near term, quantum advantage may take the form of NIST devices emulating interesting physical systems, intractable by high-performance supercomputers, I mean. And that is, of course, well known, has been said by Solder and Kovacs and Serac, and demonstrated on traps, atom traps, etc., optical traps. But now you can do it with superconducting devices. So, thanks for listening, and questions or comments?
Thank you very much, Göran. Are there questions?
I more just had a comment regarding the quantum volume, that sometimes, let's say, for the practical applications, the quantum volume might be a bit misleading in what would actually be required for simulations, as we can see, for example, now with the 27 qubit case. So let's say it's one figure of merit, but personally I think it's always better to use multiple metrics somehow to discuss separately.
That was basically my point.
Exactly.
Also,
one number doesn't really tell much.
I mean, quantum volume tells you that if it's 10, for instance, it means you have 10 qubits, and you can run on that you run a circuit which is depth 10. So a number of gates, sort of sequentially, that corresponds to repeating things 10 times. So you sort of have a square of qubits and depth, and that gives, and that means that in a single shot you entangle that system, and that is really impressive if you can do it, right? But if you want to do something that beats a classic machine doing quantum chemistry, you have to have a few hundred qubits that way, and then you have to have a depth which are many hundreds down there, which means many millions of gates. So if you want to do something really useful, the quantum volume explodes in practice. This is my way of looking at it. I don't know if you mean anything different.
Just meaning that the quantum volume probably doesn't measure directly whether a device is useful for practical applications. It gives a hint, but it's not the only figure of merit.
I'm saying that if it's going to be useful in solving a quantum chemistry problem, really solving it at a level where a classical machine, supercomputer, cannot handle it, then you would have to have quantum volumes of the style of 2 to the 100 in practice. This is my view.
Okay.
I was wondering about those 6 quantum computers which are to be installed. Those places which were chosen, did they have the background on those specific types of computers, or it's just to the empty space?
Yeah. I mean, okay, yes and no. Yes and no. I mean, some of these installations have no experience of quantum computer at all. And the idea is simply to procure machines to connect with those installations and get a sort of a center that can actually provide quantum services. I have to say, Barcelona, they have experience of quantum systems. So and we also have, right? But some of the others have not. It shouldn't matter really. So that's the whole idea that, I mean, Google had no experience of quantum computers, for instance. IBM does.
Good, then we get the IBM perspective also.
I was wondering when Heike would have a comment.
No, thank you very much for the great presentation and also giving insights.
Could you speak up
Yeah,
more?
thank you very much for your great presentation, Göran. I actually have a question for the HPC part. You mentioned the integration of quantum computing into HPC.
Yeah.
And also, though I wonder a bit, because if you look into HPC, then also HPC may be delivered through the cloud. And the question is how the co-integration then in the end will work. And so I wonder what your perspective, you mentioned that there is now the different centers talk to each other and there may be one part of integrating in one standardization. So I was wondering whether you can comment a bit more on this.
Well, if I understand your question, I'll answer like I think I understand your question, and you tell me if I didn't. At the moment, this HPC plus QC, there is a question of who should service who. And the HPC people often have the feeling that the HPC should somehow control parts of the quantum computer, and that you have to have very fast, no latency at all in order to be able to do that. While the other attitude is that so in that sense, the HPC should not only be an entry point for the cloud service, right? But it should really be co-located, or rather the quantum computer should be co-located with the HPC, and the quantum computer should only be sort of a subroutine in a program. While the other attitude that we are having is that a quantum computer should basically be made almost self-sufficient and have a very fast classical hardware in order to be able to do the corrections. And then the HPC doesn't have to be so darn HPC itself, right? But it will be the entry point. Maybe you would need it for really building up large quantum circuits, etc. You need power for that, and maybe the quantum computer classical hardware shouldn't do that, etc. But sort of it's a floating border, and which is really there for a lot of research, and but you can see sort of certain attitudes being formed in how to handle these things. Was that an answer?
Yeah, thank you very much, Göran. Thank you.
And IBM actually, I got the feeling that IBM actually is sort of, the co-location with IBM is not that, I mean, you're also talking about latency and importance, etc. You're integrating things very strongly, but not at the level that
Right now, I mean, the integration of the classical and the quantum computer is very, very, very important, as you also showed in the example of where you have a quantum and the classical very intensively working with each other.
Yeah.
right? And so you don't want to kind of this is why we have Qiskit runtime, that you don't worry about this interaction between the classical and the quantum work, right?
Yeah.
So that is really tightly integrated. That gives you also additional
it's
speed,
tightly
as we could
integrated.
show, right?
Sure.
And that's a very important part of it.
Yeah, it's tightly integrated at the level that you have to have a efficient operating system that really can do all this parallel processing and etc. and stitching it and
Yes.
putting things together. But I think that is one thing. But then there is another level
Yes,
of that
I agree.
where you have to do error correction, and then you
Yeah.
have to be really tight, and that cannot be done by the classical HPC. It has to be done by really FPGA's stuff in the...
And also, if you look at it, HPC today, right, they are very specifically optimized for each workload they need to do.
Yeah.
So I think you cannot just take a general processor and say, oh, I do something. This will not work in a future design, which you need to think about. Therefore, I'm a bit when you think about standardization, or the community thinks about standardization, it's also very, very important that there is nothing too early standardized which is not yet known how to really do it. Because there may be things which need to be done and then they will need to be changed. And so that's why, so when you mentioned this, I wanted to understand what you think about, and I think that's very important, that there needs to be standardization, but not too early, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And things will shift because there is more and more specific processors for the individual workloads which need to be done, and I think it needs to be seen what processors will be needed for error correction, right? That's also something which need to be then developed.
Yeah.
One little point, Goran, the 433 we had already in 2022. 2023 is the 1000 one, so we're working on this right now.
Okay. I think this is a good point or a good time to end this session, and I think we should thank all the speakers again.